acceptable in your sight, O Lord, for you are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. That opening hymn that we had today always seems to touch me, especially when we get to verse 3. It says, "Through fiery trials your pathway shall lie. My grace, all sufficient, shall be your supply. The flames shall not hurt you. I only design your dross to consume and your gold to refine." Powerful, because I remember an experience I had when I was in seminary that concerned my brother, who was going through a really rough time at that moment. Actually, later on, he would say it turned out to be his conversion. He was a churchgoer, but when he went through this time of great panic and fear, I asked the seminary community to pray for him. And a few weeks later, we had that song in chapel on Wednesday morning, and I just felt like God was speaking to me. That's what I'm doing in Terry's life right now. I'm doing it, and I just started to weep uncontrollably. And that doesn't, you guys know me. That doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen very often. And that memory always comes back to me whenever we sing that particular song. It's great, and my brother Terry is a very, very faithful and outgoing man with his faith too. I wish everybody could get a chance to meet him someday and chat with him. But it also kind of goes in that verse with all of our readings today. I mean, like Joe said a couple weeks ago, it says these are all good passages and incredible ones to preach on and to share on. But I've been drawn to this passage in the Old Testament again, where Joseph, a wonderful figure in the Old Testament, is introduced. We didn't get a lot of his story there, but we got some of it, and we got some of the family dynamics that were going on with him because of, some things that happened. Maybe I should have had Kim read about the two dreams that kind of wonder why sometimes things get dropped out, and sometimes I look at those and say, we need to include those. I should have done that this time. It wasn't all that long. But at any rate, Joseph was Jacob's son, one of his sons. And remember, he had two wives, Jacob did, Leah and Rachel. And we went over a little bit that last week. Rachel was really his favorite. And she had two children. She had two sons. Joseph. Anybody remember the other one? Benjamin. That's it. Benjamin. And so these were his favorite children. And you heard about there how Jacob really, really liked Joseph. But Joseph got himself in trouble with a couple of dreams. You know, any of us can control your dreams? I haven't been able to figure out how to do that. Sometimes I like the dreams I have, and sometimes I don't. But anyway, Joseph had a couple of dreams, and he went on to tell his family about them. And basically, just in summary, they were said, "Hey, the day's going to come. You're all going to serve me." They didn't like hearing that. I encourage you, go ahead and not only read those few verses about those two dreams between now and next week, because next Sunday we'll have the end of Joseph's story, or pretty close to the end of it as one of our readings. But at any rate, it really got the brothers to hating him. And a question goes through my mind, even though Moses is credited for actually recording all of Genesis, question goes through my mind, did Joseph know how much hated he was by his brothers? I would bet, yeah, he knew. I mean, that passage before we jumped over, the part we skipped, ends with, "But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him, could not speak peacefully to him." Have you ever felt that way to somebody? You just couldn't speak peacefully to them? Or have you ever had the feeling like somebody couldn't speak peacefully to you? You get a feeling for how they might be thinking about you. And so I believe that he really, really knew it. So I think it was somewhat exceptional and on Joseph's behalf, that when his father said, hey, your brothers are all out somewhere, caring for the flock, why don't you go check on them, see how they're doing. He goes out to find them where they are, where they said they were going to be, and the passage said, well, they weren't there. You know, that would have been a great opportunity for Joseph to just turn around and go back home. Sorry, Dad, they're gone. Don't know where they are. But this stranger shows up. Now they went to Dothan, and he had a choice. Well, my dad said, go check on them. Okay, I'll do it. I got a sneaking hunch they're not going to be wanting to see me. I'm sure he had no clue as to what was coming. But he had an opportunity to turn back, and he didn't. So in a way you could say he was just being obedient to his father. This is the way it's recorded here, verses 14 through 17. So he said, this is Jacob, go now, see if it's well with your brothers with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron and he came to Shechem, and the man found him wandering in the fields, and the man asked him, what are you seeking? I'm seeking my brothers. Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? Oh, they've gone away, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. You know, this led Joseph into experiencing things in life that many of us would probably put in the category of being unbearable. If that, we might say, if something like that happened to me, that would do me in. I'd lose it. I'd crawl into a corner. I'd just say, Lord, let the world fall on me and just take me on home. Not only did his brothers hate him, but they conspired to kill him. Anybody ever conspired to kill any of us? I dare say probably no one here has had that experience. But Joseph, you know, gets through it. Some would say that what Joseph experienced, moving on a little bit further, was a bit of prefiguring of what actually Christ did for us as well. Won't go into depth in this, but Joseph left his homeland and ended up in a foreign country that he had no intention of going to. But it was part of God's plan. Jesus left heaven to come to this foreign land. Joseph was put into prison. And we don't know how long he was there, but there's good possibility he was there for quite a while. This passage said he was 17 when all this happened. You read a few chapters later, and it says that he was 30 when he came into service of the Pharaoh. We're dealing with 13 years there. How much of that was he in prison? I'm not sure, but probably a good bit of it. So he was in prison. Jesus went to the cross for us, in a way, imprisoned on that tool of execution. But then Joseph was, we could almost say, exalted when Pharaoh found out about him and placed in a position of power and authority, second only to Pharaoh. Well, Jesus was exalted as well. It wouldn't be right to say second in power and authority to the Father, but he did sit at the right hand of the Father when all of his work was done. And then what did Joseph do when he was in Egypt? You could say, in a word, he brought salvation to the nation of Israel because he provided. It was through his wisdom and understanding that he actually made sure that food was available for them when that great famine happened. Jesus brought salvation of an eternal nature to all of us. Anyway, Joseph went through some rough times in life. And it reminds me of another boy I heard about. He and his family were kicked out of their home when he was 7 years old. So he was homeless. And because of that, he was forced to go to work at 7 years old. I've got a grandson that's 6 years old. Thinking about him being forced to go to work, it doesn't connect. It just doesn't connect. But yet that was true for this young lad. When this young lad was 9 years old, his mother died. At the age of 22, he was suddenly fired from his job at a clerk in a store. He applied to law school, but he wasn't accepted. He went back into business with a partner, and when this young lad, now at age 29, when he was at 29, that partner dies. This young man courted a girl for 4 years. She said no. Well, politics got his attention. He tried for election, lost. Tried again, lost. On his third try, he was elected, but then when he tried for re-election, he lost. At age 41, his son died. Something that I am so grateful that I haven't experienced any one of my children dying yet. Well, he tried to get elected to the Senate. He was defeated. He was a vice presidential candidate on the ticket. He was defeated then too. He went back to try at the Senate. He was defeated again. You'd think maybe he'd start to get an idea. But at age 61, he was elected president. And you know who I'm talking about. It was Abe Lincoln. Abe Lincoln. You know, when you look at Abe's history, you might think, well, some people just have all the luck, don't they? Not so much. And Joseph. When I think of him being second only to Pharaoh, you think, some people have all the luck, don't they? Not so much. Not so much. You know, all of us who are here this morning, and everybody that we know, if we haven't already gone through something in life that will really rock our world, most of us probably will. I think very few of us will be able to get to the end of life and look back and say, I never went through anything that just really put me on the brink or the very edge of sanity, of just giving in. Some of us will go through some of those things more than once. But I think it's probably part of just the human experience in general that we go through those things. I remember, the time that rocked my world, that still sticks in my mind the most, was back in January, maybe it was early February of 1981. Stephen was 3 months old. Melissa was almost 3 years old. And I was managing a jewelry store down in South Florida with a jewelry store chain that had over 500 stores nationwide and had over 100 right here in Florida. And that store was doing the second most volume of all those 100 stores in Florida. Did over $1 million worth of business in a year. I saw myself, in some ways, on the track, moving up the corporate ladder, so to speak. And then I walk into work one day. The manager calls me out into the hallway in the mall and said, "Mr. Doan, give me the keys. You're fired." It was not without cause. I did break some of the company policies, which I knew were grounds for immediate termination, but the thought that went through it won't happen to me. Well, it did happen to me. My world crushed. We had debt up to here. And I had to go home and tell Kim. I wasn't sure. I knew she said she loved me, but I wasn't sure how she was going to react to this.